This is Clear Cut Plus with Michelle McCory.
Welcome, everyone. Thank you for watching. The Turkish military has halted its campaign in Syria, at least for now. Turkey's President Erdogan has agreed to a 5-day ceasefire. Vice President Mike Pence announced the deal today while in Ankara.
The Turkish side will pause Operation Peace Spring in order to allow for the withdrawal of YPG forces from the safe zone for 120 hours. All military operations under Operation Peace Spring will be paused, and Operation Peace Spring will be halted entirely on completion of the withdrawal.
Now, the deal likely means an end to tougher U.S. sanctions on Turkey. For more on the story, let's bring in our senior Washington correspondent, Dan Raviv. Dan, can you break down for us who are the winners and who are the losers in this deal?
Anyone in the world who's looking at this entire situation, certainly in the Middle East, will tell you that Turkey is a big winner. The Turks call this just a pause. They're not using the word ceasefire, and the written agreement, it turns out, doesn't say ceasefire. And if the Turks are not totally happy with the Kurdish withdrawal, one can imagine that the military campaign could continue. The Turkish army is certainly inside Syria, and Turkey gets to avoid the harsh sanctions that President Trump was threatening. He called it unconventional tough love. And Mr. Trump calls this a great day for civilization, a better situation without U.S. troops being in danger.
These fighters that we have captured, they'll be under very, very strict control of various different groups, but we will be watching, we will be in charge, and they'll be under very, very powerful and strict control.
The president also considers the Kurds to be among the winners. He claims that the deal saves millions of lives because there could have been a wider war developing from all this. A Kurdish militia leader has now said that his group is accepting the deal, meaning they reluctantly will leave. Michelle?
All right, and Dan, we know that the president pulling the troops out was a rare moment where we had Republicans and Democrats coming together, agreeing that they didn't think that was the right move. I imagine Congress is asking a lot of questions about this deal. Is President Trump finding a lot of support on Capitol Hill?
Well, it seems mixed. Certainly, there are Republicans who are glad that Vice President Pence and Secretary of State Mike Pompeo were able to accomplish what they did in Turkey, though Republican Senator Mitt Romney is criticizing what looks like inept and weak U.S. policymaking. The top Democrats in Congress issued a statement that also says that Mr. Trump has given Turkey's President Erdogan everything he wanted. But Pompeo, while in Ankara, offered perhaps a preview of what he would tell congressional committees, that there's a lot of work to do, Pompeo said, in that part of the Middle East.
But this effort tonight sets the conditions for the successful resolution of this particular piece, which created enormous risk and a real risk of instability. And President Erdogan's decision tonight to work alongside President Trump to achieve this ends will be one that I think will benefit Turkey a great deal.
Secretary of State Pompeo has just arrived in Israel tomorrow, Friday. He'll be briefing the Prime Minister, Benjamin Netanyahu, about the U.S. decision-making in Syria. Some Israelis are concerned. I-24 News has learned also that the president's son-in-law, Jared Kushner, will be going to Israel and Saudi Arabia in about 10 days, as one official puts it, to take the temperature in the region, not to immediately unveil the rest of that U.S. peace plan. Michelle?
Yes, well, with all the political chaos going on in Israel, I can't imagine it's the right time for the peace plan at all. Dan, thank you so much for the update and the details, Dan Raviv. Joining me now is Matt Brodsky. He's a senior fellow with the Gold Institute for International Strategy. Matt, good to have you with us. Matt, the president is praising the ceasefire. Critics are saying it's a huge win for Turkey and a real betrayal to the Kurds because the ceasefire is effectively a Kurdish surrender. What's your take?
Well, what we did was last week, of course, we paved the path for the ethnic cleansing of our ally, the Kurds, by, for no reason, just giving up all of our leverage and allowing this to occur. And then, once there was an uproar, we went with our hat in hand to Ankara today to try to get a ceasefire, a pause. This pause essentially is our blessing. It makes us complicit in the ethnic cleansing of the Kurds. We are going to be removing Kurds from the area, which is where they're from, taking them out of their houses. And then when it's over, if Kurds remain, of course, Turkey is going to be able to claim that we weren't holding up our end of the bargain, and then the fighting will continue. So this is actually, I think, worse than having a little pause in the fighting, because why should Kurds give up their land to an invasion that's illegal, and invasion and occupation and annexation, as it may well turn out to be.
So you don't see the Kurds taking this opportunity to, in fact, leave? You think the Kurds are going to remain?
I think some Kurds will remain, but whether they do or don't, it basically makes us complicit in the ethnic cleansing. It puts us kind of on the level of where you saw in other parts of Syria.
Matt, the president's supporters would say that that's an exaggerated term.
Look up the definition of ethnic cleansing. It's not extermination necessarily. It's actually moving an ethnic group out of an area. And the plan that Erdogan has spelled out is to move Kurds out of this area, all of whom he considers terrorists, and to move in a different population.
All right,
and incidentally, he's using proxy terrorist groups to accomplish this.
Matt, I hear what you're saying. Here's what the supporters of the president say. They say that he took unfair heat about withdrawing the troops because a ceasefire agreement is proof that he made the right decision, in that the move disrupted the status quo, that it was an untenable situation. Something had to give. U.S. troops had to come out of there. At least in the scenario, some real results could be delivered. There could be an end to the impasse. What do you say to that?
The real results are we are blessing everything that Erdogan wanted to achieve with his invasion. So now, instead of him having to fight, we've created an agreement that recognizes everything in advance that Erdogan wanted. And we're claiming that as a victory. That is really bizarro land that we have entered into. This is a horrible, horrible development, and it makes the United States far weaker on the international stage.
So why do you think the president then made this policy decision? I mean, is he getting anything back from Erdogan for it?
No, we're getting nothing back from it. What he's getting from it is he can tell his base that he's pulling people out. He discovered that the Taliban is not that great of a partner in Afghanistan, so he couldn't end up making a deal to withdraw 14,000 troops from Afghanistan, which is where the term endless war comes from. So instead, he's taken the same rhetoric, applied it to Syria, and he's taken out 1,000 troops, except you can't find a location around the globe where U.S. troops are, of the tens and tens of thousands that we have, and find a location where the removal of 1,000 troops that are American would be as detrimental to America's long-term strategic interests as you will find with what we're doing right now. So to call this anything short of horrific is bizarre.
Yeah, well, look, this does create a power vacuum in Syria for the United States, exactly the same thing that President Obama has been criticized for. Explain why this is so detrimental to American interests.
Well, we had leverage there to use with all the other parties. For instance, Iran now will be able to fight over Turkey or Russia. Any one of those three will control one of the main borders between Syria and Iraq, which is one of the land corridors that Iran uses. The oil field we had was a major source of revenue that Assad wanted and Russia wanted, and so did Iran. Now that goes back with the leverage we had of controlling and having pacified. It wasn't an active war where we were. The land pacified there gave us a say in Syria's political future, which means we didn't need to own it like it was Iraq that we broke, but it gave us an ability to help control where international funding would go, so it wouldn't go to Assad, who would be building up Syria in his areas just for his loyalists, while he continued his own ethnic cleansing campaign. So this really has helped all of our enemies.
We're going to have to leave it there. Matt Brodsky, thank you. We'll be right back with Kimberly Strassel.